Hi, my name's Ian. I'm an engineer. I've done some business, but mostly I'm a dad, and I'm a dad who's been worried about climate change. And I was worried until I learned about some new tech. Um, and I'm shocked by how exciting the potential is for this. So here's the basic rundown. And I just did a video about this actually. Green power is actually quite cheap now. Um, Wind, solar. Uh, the issue is matching it with grid demands, but the electricity itself is far, far, far cheaper than coal, even than nuclear. It's quite a bit cheaper. So this green cheap power, this green cheap electricity, what can be done with it? Well, some of the things that could be done, it could be stored. Okay. It could be stored in batteries. It could also be stored in chemicals. Okay. So, you know, gasoline is just a store of energy, right? Fuels, green fuels. And this molecule right here is a really interesting fuel. It is far more energy dense than hydrogen. It's easier to handle than hydrogen. And it's pretty great. So the atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. And so how we make this molecule, we use water and we split it with electrolysis, which is where the hydrogen comes from. And the nitrogen comes from the air. And when we consume this, when we burn it or put it in a fuel cell, what is left over is air, nitrogen, and water. So that is great. All right. But this last video I shared, there's some not great news, which is as parts of the world industrialize, the amount of coal power generation, coal electricity is grew rapidly. Okay, so these charts go back over the past 20 years, and like we see some green generation in the past 10 years, which is sort of the golden color, but the darkest color there, that's coal, and that's going up rapidly. So not only has all this stuff been built, people are relying on it, right? So as you're growing rapidly, you're probably not going to replace the coal stuff you just built with green power. You're not going to invest twice. So this is one of these stories where you go, oh, shoot. You know, they spent all this money to build this stuff. Are we stuck with it? Are we going to continue with the coal pumping out the greenhouse gases? And I learned something really cool. You can co-fire. So you can use nitrogen, hydrogen, ammonia is what that chemical is. And you can put that into the feed to offset the amount of coal you use. So if it was 50-50, if you're using a ton of coal an hour, if you put the ammonia in, you can use half a ton of coal, right? And the mix you can use kind of depends on your burner unit and other things, but Japan is all over this. The government is deep into what does it take to modify coal generation to also run with ammonia, and they have like a government strategy around this, and that's great, right? If we look, remember those charts, some of that stuff could be offset by green power, green fuel. So Japan, I mean, it's not just one research project, it's a whole supply and demand strategy, right? So that's the power generation that's going to demand the ammonia for green fuel. That's the supply chain that's going to generate the fuel. That's going to the tanks and the ports to transport the fuel. They have a whole plan that they're working towards, and that's really exciting, right? One of the things that they're working on, so ammonia is produced by a very famous chemical process, and part of the reasons it's famous is ammonia goes into fertilizer, and fertilizer allowed the world to triple the yield of land, triple, right? So for the past 100 years, like, there's no way we could feed everyone without this chemical process called the Haber-Bosch process. And in the Haber-Bosch process, you take natural gas, you crack it, so you take off the carbon, join it with oxygen to create carbon dioxide, and then the hydrogen you take and you combine it with atmospheric nitrogen in sort of like a two-step sort of thing. So people have been experimenting with using hydrogen, green generated hydrogen, rather than the natural gas generated hydrogen. So that's like a modified Haber-Bosch process. But one of the things other people are right into, but Japan's also into, is developing the catalysts to do it in sort of one step. So you run electricity through water with a catalyst in it, an electrolyte. And so rather than getting oxygen and hydrogen out of the electrolysis, you get oxygen and ammonia, which seems to be very scalable, right? So this is sort of part of the supply side, doing the research on figuring out how to do this at a massive scale. Part of it is doing all the deals, right? Lining up the supply chain contracts with ports and people who can make ammonia or consume ammonia, right? To get the economy of this going. So, you know, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Australia, Canada, US. So here, orange are the supply countries and green are the demand countries, okay? And then it's the actual demand, real big places that use coal that are willing or interested in modifying to use ammonia, which is green. So Malaysia already started work on this, right? Indonesia already started work on this, started in April 2022. India, March 2022. And Morocco, 2021. So even though we saw this giant buildup in coal-fired generation capacity, the good news is it can be modified. It can use a green fuel, and that's great, right? Good news. Good news. Okay, so anyway, I will share the link to the Japanese ministry in the comments of the video. Have a good day.